Welcome, everyone. Today, we're looking at one bill, just one bill in Colorado, that might just change everything about how American suburbs look and feel. We're talking about a real showdown between the state and local towns, all centered on the future of the starter home.
But, before we dive deep into all the legal stuff, let's start with a question that probably hits pretty close to home for a lot of you. Why is your backyard so expensive? Seriously, why is it so hard to just afford a house with a little bit of land? Well, it turns out a huge part of the answer isn't actually the house. It's the ground it's sitting on.
All right, so that brings us to our first big idea here, the land squeeze. Because when you really get down to it, at the very heart of this whole housing crisis is something pretty simple, but really powerful. Just how big a piece of land your house is legally required to sit on.
And this number really tells the story. A study from the National Zoning Atlas found that a mind-blowing 98%, almost all of it, of land that's zoned for single-family homes in the U.S. has a minimum lot size rule. So this isn't some rare thing, it is the rule, not the exception.
For generations, the classic American dream was a house on a decent-sized lot, maybe 5,000, 7,000 square feet. But today, with land prices just going through the roof, that traditional lot is one of the biggest reasons houses cost so much. It's basically turned the dream of owning a home into a luxury item that tons of people just can't afford.
Okay, so let's make sure we're all on the same page with this term, minimum lot size. All it means is it's the smallest piece of land you're legally allowed to build a house on according to your local government. So if the law in your town says 7,000 square feet, you literally cannot build on 6,999. And believe it or not, this one little rule probably shapes what our neighborhoods look like more than anything else.
And that's what brings us to Colorado. A group of lawmakers there are looking at this problem, and they're trying to tackle it head-on with a pretty radical idea. Let's take a look at what they've got in mind. So here it is, House Bill 26-1114. Its mission sounds simple, but it's actually a huge deal. The whole point is for the state to step in, override all those local zoning laws, and just dramatically shrink the required lot size. The goal? To finally create a path for smaller and hopefully much more affordable starter homes.
So, how exactly would this work? Well, the bill puts a hard cap on minimum lot sizes at 2,000 square feet. That's about a third of the typical size you see now, and it applies in most cities with municipal water and sewer. And here's the really clever part, it also stops local governments from using other sneaky rules like setbacks or frontage requirements to make it impossible to actually use these new smaller lots. It's a direct attack on the single biggest cost of a new house, the land. Yeah, but as you can probably guess, a proposal this big has kicked off a major political battle. And this isn't just about housing policy, not at all. This is a fundamental fight over a huge question. Who gets to decide what our neighborhoods look like?
On one side of this fight, you've got the bill's sponsor, Representative Rebecca Stewart. Her argument is basically that this is something we have to do. It's about opening up options for a whole new generation. Young professionals, families, even older folks looking to downsize, who are just completely locked out of the housing market right now. For her, it all comes down to accessibility and affordability.
But then, on the other side, you've got opponents like Representative Chris Richardson. And he's saying, whoa, hold on. He sees this as a really dangerous case of the state overstepping its bounds. His point is that when the state just mandates the outcome, all those local planning meetings become what he calls procedural theater. The decision's already made, and it silences the voices of the people who actually have to live with the consequences.
So this really sums up the whole debate, right? Supporters are saying, look, this is a very specific, targeted fix for a huge problem. It lowers land costs and updates some really outdated rules. But the opponents see a blunt instrument that just smashes local democracy and totally ignores the fact that every community is different. It's just a classic clash of priorities.
And it's so important to realize this isn't just a Colorado thing, not by a long shot. This exact same debate is flaring up in state capitals all across the United States.
Just take a look at the scoreboard here. You've got states like Texas and Oregon, where they managed to pass similar laws to allow for more homes. But then you look at Utah and Montana, where almost identical bills went down in flames. It just goes to show you how divisive this issue is, and that the outcome in Colorado is, well, it's anyone's guess.
Okay, so let's zoom back in on Colorado. What happens next? What are the hurdles this bill still has to clear before it actually becomes law?
Well, it's already made it through the House, which is a big deal, but the fight is definitely not over. It still has to get through the Senate, and then it has to land on the governor's desk for a signature. And here's something really interesting. Even if it passes all that, look at the effective date. We're talking October 2031. So this is a really long-term play designed to give cities plenty of time to adapt.
But you can bet that supporters in Colorado are looking very closely at what just happened in Utah, because it's a perfect cautionary tale of just how fast these kinds of bills can completely fall apart.
So what happened in Utah? Well, a few things. First, opponents did a great job of framing it as a top-down mandate from the state government. They built this really simple, really powerful story around fears everyone can relate to: traffic jams, no parking, and overcrowded schools. On top of that, the whole thing felt rushed, which really ticked off local mayors and city councils, people who could have been allies. And you can be sure, opponents in Colorado are taking notes on that exact playbook.
And so all of this leaves us with the million-dollar question, doesn't it? Is shrinking the backyard the secret to finally unlocking the dream of homeownership for a whole new generation? Or is this the beginning of the end for local control and maybe the suburban way of life as we've always known it? Whatever happens in Colorado could very well be the blueprint for suburbs all across the country.